This podcast is brought to you by lineupmedia.fm.
Because if you can tell me what your habits are, I can tell you what sort of a person you are. I can tell you what your future looks like.
But like I always say, life is 10% what happens to you, it's 90% what you do about it.
The people who are most effective in the workplace believe that their future is going to be bigger than their past. When people don't believe that their future is going to be bigger than their past, they begin to disengage.
You're listening to The Circuit of Success, a podcast dedicated to helping you achieve success in every facet of life. Only on the lineupmedia.fm podcast network. Now, your host, Brett Gilliland.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland, and today you can see right over here, I got Derek Meinhart. What's up, Derek?
How's it going, Brett? Glad to be here today.
It's good, man. I'm excited to have you. For those of you who don't know, Derek and I, we have grown up together since third grade. He moved to Mattoon, Illinois, and so we've been good buddies ever since then, man, and still get to connect even through all the craziness today. So thanks for coming down.
Yep, glad to be here.
Maybe we'll sneak out on the golf course a little later if you can tell by my dress attire, right? So, well, man, how about for those people that don't know who Derek Meinhart is, why don't you just give us a little lay of the land, a little bit about Derek and Innovative Staff Solutions and what you guys have built?
Yeah, obviously, like we said, grew up in Mattoon, Illinois. Brett was one of the first kids I met growing up. I still remember in third grade meeting Brett and playing a lot of basketball in the front driveway there.
That's right.
And probably winning most of the times, but Brett was never going to let me be the last one to win. It was right.
Double or nothing.
A good time.
Yeah. Just keep going double or nothing, right, till you win?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely enjoyed that. Went to Eastern Illinois University. Graduated from there in 2001. Played a little professional golf for a few years. Chasing my dream a little bit in Scottsdale, Arizona, and had a great time doing that. But realized that I needed to get a real job. And so called my dad and asked him if I could come back. And came back and started working in the family business, Innovative Staff Solutions. My parents started that company 27 years ago now, and it's kind of amazing to look back on that and see what they built, and an opportunity for myself to continue to build upon that here in the next few years as my dad retired about 3 years ago.
Awesome. Yep. Well, it's amazing, man. I know, like, obviously when you and I were growing up, they were, I think your dad worked at, the telephone company, your mom was a nurse, and I think they just kind of said enough's enough and we're going to go take control of our own destiny. I mean, is that kind of a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, my parents are kind of the true American dream. They wanted something more. They wanted to provide something more to my brother and I, and they took that dream and made it happen. Yeah. And I've learned a lot from them over the last years. I was thankful enough to be able to work with my dad for almost 14 years, right. And so it's a great story.
Yeah, it really is. And so when you think about, if you could boil it down to maybe one or two things you learned from mom and dad, and you learned from one, taking a risk, betting on yourself. Because there's no guaranteed paycheck, right, when they started a staffing company. And so you got to take the risk and put your family's kind of ass on the line, right?
Right.
And then you do that. But what have you learned from them?
I've learned a lot. I was thinking about that on the drive down here. What have I learned from them? I mean, one of the things that always comes back to my mind is failure was not an option for my parents. My dad didn't take a paycheck for the first year. And my mom still worked in healthcare for a part of that time while we started the business. But I think for them it was, they did whatever it took to be successful. Sometimes getting up at 3 a.m, going and picking up employees. We're in the staffing business, so employees are our product, right? Yeah. Going and picking them up and taking them to our client's facility and getting the product done. I think that's ultimately what's carried us to success over the years. That determination they had. Yeah. So I think I still have that today. I'm kind of one of those people that I get knocked down, but I get right back up, and that's what success is to me. Well,
I think you got to, right? Yeah. I mean, and I tell this to my kids, I'm sure you do the same, but the only failure is if you don't get back up.
Sure.
Right? Yep. And if you get back up and then learn from what you did, I think that's key, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's, what my parents did, starting out. I'm sure they made a lot of mistakes. Some they've told me, some they haven't, right? But, we've learned from those. We continue to get better, and we've had some, bumps along the road. And I think we've got better because of that and become a better company.
Yeah. Again, learning, right? Learning from the mistakes. Absolutely. And I think I think I call it the entrepreneurial roller coaster. I was just talking to my wife about this the other night, and we were sitting there talking, and I said, there's days, where you think you're going to, I just say this flippantly, jokingly, right? You're going to take over the world. And then there's days you feel like maybe, you can never do anything good again. Right. And then, you just ride this roller coaster, right? And are you on that roller coaster? And if so, how do you overcome that to stay positive and do the things that you're doing today?
I think there's a lot of key things to that. I think it's just, getting up one day at a time and executing that process. I think that was a big mistake I made kind of coming back into the business is I thought that, success was going to be easy. I was going to save the world, and I learned that wasn't going to be the case, right? And, I had to, drive those daily behaviors that I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm very disciplined about that today. And, again, I think as you said, some days you're going to be great, some days are not. But I think if you have more good days, that will lead to success or the objective that you're wanting to meet.
So talk about those. What are those? I had it written down here, actually, so you must be reading my notes. But what are those 1 to 2 things? If I followed Derek around with one of these cameras and said, I know this is going to happen day in and day out, personally, professionally, whatever it may be, what are those things that you've got?
I think, from a personal standpoint, I have a passion still for golf. Yep. Even though I gave up that, childhood dream to play maybe on the PGA Tour at one point, I realized that's not going to happen. It's still there. It's still burning, and, so I consistently, try to get better at golf every single day, whether that be practicing or, learning something new. I think you sent me a message on, Instagram earlier today that I'd bought a body track and you didn't know what that was. Well, that's just another.
What is this thing?
Yeah. It's I won't bore you with all those details. I'm sure your listeners aren't too concerned about that. But the reality of it is it's just another piece of information for me on how I get better at golf. And so how do I correlate that into business? Because I feel like it's a lot of the same stuff, right? Getting better at golf is the same as getting better in business. And so it's whether that's reading books every day. I try to read a couple pages. I think I took this out of your book. 10 pages a day. That's kind of my goal. Right. But I'm constantly trying to get better. I'm trying to surround myself with talented people. My organization is a pretty large organization for a staffing organization, and so trying to surround myself with those people and push those people to be great, right? But focused on, again, the process. We talk about that a lot. I'm sure you talk about that in your business a lot, and driving my people to be better and driving myself to be better. I have those same expectations, and so those are some of the things I do.
Yeah. So when you think about that, give us some perspective. Like, how many people are in your company? How many offices do you have around the country? Just because I think it's important to realize this. Not a mom and pop shop anymore, right?
Right.
This is a big deal.
Again, as I said before, it's kind of been a overnight success for my parents, and we continue to build upon that.
25-year overnight success.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Wayne, Patty, if you're listening, I will step in and say that for you. It's not an overnight success. They've taken a lot of risk and worked very hard.
Fair enough. Yeah. So, but we have 25 locations in 4 states: Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, and Missouri. Obviously, the majority of our business is in Illinois and Indiana, but we continue to expand, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm going to continue to focus on over here in the next few years. But we have about 85 internal employees, and we have about 2,000 temporary employees out on assignment working for our clients every day. And that really hasn't changed. During the pandemic, we experienced a little bit of a downfall, but there's a lot of clients still needing a lot of people out there, and we're seeing a lot of success there.
So let's talk about the pandemic for a second. What have you learned, again, personally, professionally? How have you had to adapt? I mean, anything from a leadership standpoint you can share with us?
Sure. I'll be honest. I've been back in the business 17 years, and this is probably one of the toughest years for me as a leader of the organization. I think that people need leadership. Now more than ever in this pandemic. I think people are really struggling with what to expect, the uncertainty. I think that's what people really struggle with. And as leaders in any organization, you got to keep, leading your employees through that. And that's what I've learned is I need to be more in front of the employees, communicating more with those employees than I ever have. Right. And that's difficult to do. Right. I mean, we're some people working from home. Some people aren't coming in the office. Some people don't want to, kind of get together as a group. We have a operations team of about 7 or 8 individuals. We're getting together tomorrow for the first time in a year. Nice. I think that's been a struggle and it's hard to replace that, to be honest with you. It really is. But I think that and just keeping morale going, caring about your employees and making sure they're taken care of.
Yeah. And I think think to your point, the morale, the culture, I mean, I notice for us, that's the biggest thing that I think makes us unique is the camaraderie. We say the visionary family,
Sure.
And I think, you miss that. I know I miss it. I miss being around everybody and, whether it's, giving high fives or just giving them a hug and saying hi. I mean,
Sure.
those things, it's hard to replace that.
You can only do so many Zoom calls, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's just not the same.
Yeah. I'm about
now.
tired of looking at that, whatever it is, 2-inch by 2-inch square and saying hi to people. And it's just,
Sure.
you can't connect the same, right?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
hopefully with everything going on right now, it sounds like we're starting to open back up and we'll be back to normal, if there is a normal. I think we're gonna be able to go right down the road over here and see some Cardinal baseball.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. I'm ready for that too. I miss that. We're big Illinois fans. Illinois basketball is going on. Right now, beat nice win there.
Yeah.
Tuesday night there against Michigan. So
wasn't even close.
Yeah, that's exciting for us. I remember. I talk a lot about the Flying Illini to some of my friends. There in Mattoon, they kind of look at me kind of crazy there, Brett, because they don't remember the Flying Illini like you and I do. It
was amazing.
Kendall Gill,
Oh, yeah.
Nick Anderson, that shot in Indiana. I mean, that was just awesome.
Yeah.
But
and Michigan's the one that took us down, if I remember correctly, in 1989. Ramil Robinson hitting a couple buckets, I believe.
Yep.
But so let's talk about the daily process. So again, if I see you in the office and it's whatever time you get in, and you get your coffee and you kind of sit down at your desk, are there things in your mind that I got to do this each day? Maybe some nuggets, if you will, that you can share with our listeners.
Sure. I think, two things are important to me. One, I'm a big on goal planning.
Yep.
I've done that, every year for probably the last 10 years. That's been big for me, setting those execution type. And, I can't execute all those goals by myself. So my responsibility is to hold the team accountable or the teams, committees accountable to those goals. And so that's what I do a lot during the day, along with obviously, my responsibilities to the business of, client relationships and those things. But it's really execution of those processes that I'm focused on a lot of the time.
Yep.
Or problem solving, right? Not everything goes as planned. And so I'm spending some of that time, problem solving, working with my teams to move the company forward. And, it just doesn't go as planned a lot. And, you have to make those adjustments. But I would say one other nugget that I think is important is, build that structure out for yourself. I feel like people don't do that. And then they're not as consistent. We're talking about the ups and the downs, the peaks and the valleys. Well, you got to be as consistent as you possibly can. And if you build that structure out now, I think that's going to create your opportunity for success. There's no guarantee of that. But I think for me, I've built that structure day in and day out, week to week, month to month, year to year. And I think that's what's helped me.
Yeah. And I think it's key is that if you have the structure, then you just got to show up and do the work.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, if you have to show up and try to recreate it every day, and I know the people listening to this are successful anyways, but I think at the end of the day, if you've got your structure down, I call it your focus 90.
Sure.
Right? I know the first 90 minutes of every day what I'm going to do, then I can go out and conquer the day because I said, hey, I got to get these 5 things done. Versus the times, the reason I created Focus 90 was I would go home at night and be like, man, I was busy all day long, but what did I really accomplish?
Right.
And I think as leaders, and even just not as a leader, but anybody that's working and trying to, do something and be successful, you can have a busy day, but not accomplish much.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, right?
Yeah.
That accountability too. You got to get comfortable with that and hold yourself accountable to that. But like you said, I mean, it's just, if you don't plan out your day is going to get away from you. I mean, we got kids, we're busy too with family stuff, running a business, doing all that. And, if you don't structure that, you're going to come to, 5 o'clock and go, hey, I didn't get half the things done I wanted to do today.
Right. So talk a little bit about, we're in a group executive forum, right, that we do here. And obviously pre-pandemic, we were getting together once a month. I mean, you're driving all the way from Mattoon down here, almost a 2-hour drive. How important is it to be around like-minded people that maybe not be in your normal everyday circle? And my point to asking this question is to our listeners is to really understand the importance of building a team around you for advice. Right. So we have, I won't name them all, but we have other great, guys in this group that we can get together and bounce ideas off of. Right. And, you got a safe forum to go talk to. So how important is that for you? And what would you tell our listeners about something like that?
I can't. I mean, it's extremely important. I mean, I've been very thankful for our relationship that we, obviously we've known each other for a long, long time, and that opportunity that, you created for me. And I've always wanted that. I've always wanted to be better, always wanted to continue to improve. And I think, surrounding yourself with people that are, pushing themselves and we're pushing each other. I think that's what we get out of that group. I mean, I really do miss that group. I hope we at some point are able to get back to that. But I mean, there's been a lot of game changer ideas come out of those meetings. I think, we share best practices. Maybe someone has a different experience than you or I have, and we've learned from that. I mean, I tell this story all the time too, and I think I've told you this before, but there was we've probably been doing this executive forum it's been 5 or 6 years, I think. And there was an executive forum that I think it was in December. It was snowing. It was kind of bad out. And, it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, do I make the trip? Do I not make the trip? And, I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm going to make it. I committed to this. I'm getting a lot out of this. It's a great opportunity to network. And so I showed up that day, and a lot of people didn't make it that day because of the snow, I think. And there was me and you and John Babington, I think was his name, and Ben Newman. And, Ben Newman has been a tremendous impact in my life. And we showed up, and Ben was going to do his speech. And for your listeners, that I think Ben's been on your pod before, and, he's done a lot of talks over the years. And so he was going to do his talk with us, and it didn't really get to that point. But we sat down and we kind of chatted like this, and we had a great conversation, and I had a peak of interest of how do I continue to get better? How do I push myself? And, long story short, Ben and I connected. We've been working together for about 7 years now. Ben's has a tremendous amount of success, and he's helped me a lot with my success. So I have a lot of mentors in my life. I consider yourself a mentor for me. Ben's a mentor. My father's a mentor. I mean, there's a lot of people that are mentors, and I think that's very important. I mean, you're just never going to know it all, and you need people in your court to help you move along in that.
I think there's a huge piece right there in that deal, right? Is I have a 2-hour drive in the snow. You had every reason to not show up, right? Nobody would have judged you. Nobody would have been mad, right? But we make a choice in life, right? Business, professional, financial, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, whatever it may be. We make a choice every single day, and you made a choice that day. But also the flip side, Ben made a choice that day, right? Because I could have told him, hey man, nobody's coming. There's only going to be a couple people here, but he showed up, right? You never know, right? Just show up, get in the arena, do your thing. Good things happen, right? When you're around good people. And now, for him, it's been probably a pretty good financial thing, right? Because I know he's spoken to your group numerous times, and he's gotten to know people inside your company, and he's doing his thing, and you're doing your thing. And I just think that's really, really important to make sure we focus on that. It is a choice.
And I think, going back to what we talked about earlier too, like consistency and driving that, you have a process, right? You got to execute. Like you said, I could have easily not made that trip,
that's right?
But I was committed to what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. Did I know exactly that day how that was going to play out? No, I didn't. No. But that's been a tremendous impact on that. And, and it started, let's back up even further, Brett. I mean, I started coming down. I drive 2 hours to get down here. Why? To have, an hour and a half meeting, network with people that are very talented people, in our group. And it's created multiple opportunities for me.
So those of you listening that like this opportunity, reach out to me. I can explain it to you. But really the gist of it is it's called Executive Forum. I made that up. You can call it whatever you want to make it. But the rule is you have to have one person per industry, right? So whatever industry you want. We have, Andrew Davidson, for example, is in it now, and he's been with us for a couple years, partner at KPMG. We've got Caton Shaw, who's a ear, nose, and throat doctor running a business. And so there's all types of people, right? Aaron Broyles, I mean, just phenomenal people, but it's one industry per person, because you don't want the competition in there, number one. But number two, you want like-minded people, but they're in all different sectors of what's going on out in our world to make it great. So reach out, reach out to Derek, reach out to myself. Happy to walk you through that. Talk to us about your culture. I mean, again, we talked a little bit about it earlier with the pandemic, but post pandemic, I mean, what do you do? I know your brother's, very vital in the company as well. Nathan, I mean, what do you guys do to make sure culture stays strong?
Sure. And, one of the things, and I think it's, obviously important, and, I deal a lot with this in my business. A lot of clients come to me and want me to solve their turnover problems. And that's a very difficult, loaded question, right? I mean, how do you solve, there's no magical pill out there. There's a combination of doing a lot of great things right.
That's right.
And, culture is an important thing. But one of the unique things about ISS, or Innovative Staff Solutions, that I would say that I've kind of taken upon myself is couple things. One, I have an internal Facebook page for internal employees only. We post a lot of things on there. We share different ideas on there. We post a lot of videos. We have, different events. Like, we are big on community involvement in our communities, and so we'll post pictures on there. And one of the unique challenges about us is that, we're all spread out. We're 25 locations. So, we have 85 employees. We're not all the same. We don't see each other every day. Right. So how do we create or utilize a tool like Facebook to create a private group to share those ideas? And people feed off those ideas. People celebrate anniversaries together, right? It's the little things, right? And I think that's what's been successful and unique about that. On top of that, I'm big on self-development. I feel that if I can invest in my employees, that they become better people, maybe it's a better husband, wife, son, daughter, whatever, that they're going to become better employees. And so, like I said, you mentioned that, Ben obviously comes and speaks to my organization. He's done that every year since our relationship started. That's one piece of that, but I bring other people in to develop and focus on leadership and motivational for our employees. And I think that helps build the culture, right? We're giving back to our employees. I mean, not everybody's invested in that, and that's okay. But, we're giving back, and we're trying to, make better people.
That's huge. You talked about failure is not an option. I mean, is that you talked about your dad and your mom were like that, but is that still today? Because I feel that way, right? Failure is not an option. When you hear the word failure, what comes to mind for you?
I don't know if it's kind of a negative connotation, but I don't feel like it is. I feel like you just learn and get better and move forward. I mean, my vision, obviously my dad and mom have enjoyed retirement now for a couple of years, and it's an opportunity for my brother and I to continue to move forward. And so we're going to make some mistakes along the way, right? And my biggest thing is whether it's, making a mistake, maybe for a client or, making a mistake internally, we just got to get better every day. And I think that's what I look at failure for myself, right? I mean, I know I'm going to come back to the golf situation, but I've had a lot of failure in golf. I mean, I'm not on the PGA Tour, not going to be on the PGA Tour, but I've used that to
senior PGA Tour.
Maybe we'll see. I'm just enjoyed a birthday here a couple weeks ago. I had 7 years
still to go.
We're getting a little closer. That's what you keep reminding me of. But I think it's to try to get better, and there's always new things out there. I think tying it back to our executive forum, there's some things out there I don't know, and I need to surround myself with people that have that information or those ideas. And I think that's what failure means to me is get back up.
Always learning, like we said earlier. So fear, I ask almost everybody, as you know, in this podcast, is the fears we put in our mind, how many of them have actually blown up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
None, right? I mean, I am trying to think of fears that jump out at me right now. No, I think they've created the fear builds up to the point of getting to that actual moment, right? And, for me, I always build it up in my mind a little bit, and then I want to do more of it again, right? Is sometimes how it happens. But, again, I think I've got better at that over the years with more experience and kind of move where I'm not too fearful of much anymore. But, I think the unknown is always what builds up.
Yeah, I don't know if I can even share it on here if I still have it. I've never done this live on a podcast, but one of the things that I want to talk about is planning. I know you believe in planning. I believe in planning. I'm going to pull it up and let's see. It'll probably show up some random spot. There it is. So I put this on the screen. You don't see it, Derek, but it says Sunday planning. And I use this, and I'm not perfect, right? And don't use it every single week. But, if people want to learn more about it, reach out. But I think the point is that the Sunday planning for me, planning your week is so critically important because it'd be like the Cardinals, right? If the Cardinals are going to play the Cubs this weekend, and let's say they get swept at home, and we find out Sunday night that Mike Schilt and the Cardinals and the rest of the coaching staff, they didn't watch film. They didn't think about who they were playing. They didn't watch who the pitchers were, right? The hitters didn't watch the pitchers. The pitchers didn't watch the hitter, right? And you can go on and on with this, right? If they didn't plan, how pissed would you be as a Cardinal fan if you heard that?
Be extremely disappointed, right? You're come there to watch the best. You're watching them compete, and then they got to plan and prepare for those games. And if they're just kind of going through the motions, I mean, one, we know that they're probably not going to be a good team long term, and eventually going to lose some support there. Other than we're just diehard Cardinal fans, right? But I think that's the important piece of it, and I think that's a great reminder too, Brett, of what do I plan in a week? I mean, I get to the point of I plan it by the hour. For me, as best I can, because I have a lot of tasks to juggle, and there's certain weeks that I'm not able to get to everything. So I try to maximize that time. And I think for if you were a Cardinal organization and you're playing at that level, you gotta plan and look forward to that.
Yeah, and I think the expectation as a fan, right? Because if the Cardinals win or lose, I may be mad, but it doesn't really change my life.
Sure.
Right? At all.
Right.
Not really. It doesn't change my life at all.
Right.
I may be mad, if they lose the World Series or something, but it doesn't change my life. But you think, and you said going through the motions, how many people in our world today are just going through the motions, right? We're looking out now over an interstate, right? There's thousands of cars going by. How many people are just going through the motions? Right? When our life is way more important than that Cardinal game. We're mad at the Cardinals for not preparing, but we're not mad at ourselves, right? And you got to plan. And I think I cut you off, but
no, you're fine. I think people struggle, and I think where they struggle too, Brett, is the accountability of that. Right. I've worked with my teams, a lot on this. When you have to put it pen to paper, right? When you plan that, it makes people uncomfortable a little bit. It's not, and maybe that's the fear that you're talking about, right? When people, that sometimes bothers people. It's been a long time since I've had the fear of doing that, but when you plan that out, that creates accountability, and people are afraid of failure. And, so I think that's also important to do, so you can increase your chances of execution.
So talk to us about disappointments. Obviously not every day. This is called the circuit of success. It doesn't mean success is just a straight line, right? Mm-hmm. Success is crazy, right? There's circles, there's peaks, there's valleys, all that stuff. But for you get disappointing news today, let's say. How do you deal with that, and how quickly do you come back from that defeat?
Great question. I had this in 2020. I think you and I have talked a lot about my growth expectations and growing my business and putting my footprint on Innovative Staff Solutions and COVID set me back on that. It set me back about 2 years. I had a 5-year growth strategy. And it set me back 2 years. And, as I mentioned earlier, COVID was a very difficult year, or 2020 was a difficult year for us. But, how I've responded to that, it's making adaptations, getting back up and refocusing. And so it doesn't mean that you just, throw that plan out the window. It means you just adjust it, right? And that's what I've done. And that was a disappointment for me, not because, it's out of my control, but the reality of it is that it set my goals back, right? It set me what I wanted to accomplish in a 5-year strategy. Doesn't mean I can't accomplish it, but I'm going to have to continue to persevere and move forward. So it was the most recent disappointment I've had.
Yeah, but I think that's so important to and I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. But I think that at times you can go home at night, or you're laying in your bed, or you're exercising, whatever you're doing, you can be really pissed. Not you, collectively, right? We can be really pissed that just set us back 2 years, right?
Go ahead.
No, but I was going to say we can be really pissed about that. But at the same time, what I found, and you've heard me say this before, is the bounce back theory, right? Is your team, your staff, you're the leader. You can't just sit there and go home and lay in the fetal position and cry about it, right? It is what it is. Embrace it, learn from it, adapt. You couldn't control it. Some things are out of our control, but then you have to turn to control the controllables. Right.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, for a few months after, the pandemic hit and we were shut down, I really struggled with that. I think you and I were talking one time and, hey, what books you reading? I'm like, I've kind of stopped for a little bit because I lost the motivation. And, I'm one that, I do get upset with it. I'm emotional about it, right? And it takes me a little time to get over it. And once I got over it, I got back up and got back on the horse again. But, I'll be honest with you, I struggle with that for a little bit. And I think that was okay as long as you get back up and you move it forward.
That's right. Yeah. And I think there's the key points there too is, you talk, right? Whether it's you and I or you and whoever, I think it's important when you're struggling, reach out to people. You're not the only person struggling, right? There's a pandemic going on in the world. Right. And I think it's important that we reach out. Maybe it's somebody right now that you don't even know is struggling, but we reach out to our friends and say, hey man, how you doing? How's business? Right. I think that's critical. I think that's really important. So let's talk about the growth strategy now. What's your planning cycle like? Do you go away and go plan? Is it something you do at home, at work? What do you do for that?
I do my own planning at home a little bit with my own kind of think tank type strategies and what I want to personally move forward with. And then I do it with my team as well to get them engaged and get new ideas on the table that kind of help me move forward. And I don't have all the ideas, right? And I realize that. So, that's kind of the strategy that I kind of put in place to kind of move it forward. But I don't necessarily have a strategy to, get to that point every time. I think my goal is always to have it completed by November, end of November, to kind of give me a little bit of momentum to finish up, 2020 in this example and move into 2021 and keep that momentum going.
Yep.
So
when you look at now, so I always like to play a little game here. Let's say I give Derek, I don't know, a bunch of money, and you can't do anything with it like normal investment wise, like you would with Visionary Wealth Advisors or anybody else. But what would you do with, say a random $10 million right now? If you could invest in the future, what would that look like?
For my business or personally?
Just, anything, man. Just anything that you would want to do. So, just forget time for a minute, and you could just go do whatever you want to do. What would you like to dream about and go make happen?
Well, if we're going on my passion of golf, it's grown the game in the younger generation.
Yeah.
That's always been, passion for me is children, helping people and helping the younger generation move to reach their goals or what they want. I've been very fortunate to, my parents have provided a great life for me and great opportunities for me, but not everybody has those opportunities. Right. So how I could ever help kids, whether it be golfing or maybe it's just education or business opportunities. I enjoy that stuff, and I would enjoy that opportunity. I would feed off that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
And if I steal your cell phone from you today, and is there one app on your phone that if I deleted, that would not be good? Besides email and calendar, because that's boring.
Mm-hmm. One app. So can it be social media sites?
Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
You don't want me to delete it. Like, Brett, please don't delete this from my phone.
I would go. I'm not gonna go social media. I'm gonna go. I have a video app on my phone that I've recorded my golf swings on there for about the last 5 years, and that's the thing about technology these days that are growing up. As you can mention, I've mentioned many times in this podcast that my passion for golf is keeps me moving, and I have about 5 years of golf swings on there, Brett. So if you were to delete that
would not be good.
It would be okay, but I would be pretty upset.
Right. So. I would not say, I will say it publicly, but I will not say this ever in a group of settings or a group of friends. But obviously, the friend that you are, it is amazing the golf that you play. And I always joke and say you're like, at least probably the second or third best golfer to come out of Mattoon. But no, you're the best, right? And so, I'm sure my buddies will give me heck for that. And Nathan will say something. He already texted this morning, your brother, is like, oh, I wonder how many stories will come out of this. But again, I think the point to that is you put in the time, right? I mean, so again, whether it's golf or business, you are a student of the game, right? You're reading about it. You're thinking about it. You've designed your life around it, right? Whether it's go to the driving range or do whatever you want to do, right? Work on a simulator. I mean, those are the things that I think that people, if they want to be great at something, again, whether it's business, golf, whatever, you got to put in the time and the effort, and you've put your money where your mouth is, right? Sure. You take lessons, right? So if I'm as good a golfer as you, you're a +4 handicap, right?
Right.
How many strokes do you think he should give me today? That's the real question. But
we'll play straight up on that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'll negotiate some strokes. But I think the point is that you put your money where your mouth is, and so many people do that. I have a business coach. I know you've done coaching over the years, right? And that's important. So I'll be quiet. But talk to us a little bit about that.
The coaching part of it?
Just how important it is to be a student in the game.
Yeah. To back up, I go back to, when we were growing up as kids, right? I mean, we were competitive, right? And we wanted to beat each other a lot. I mean, whether it be you and I, there was a lot of Laura Myerscough was in there, Blake Carney was in there. We were playing for money we didn't have, right?
Exactly.
The only person that lost in that deal was Jerry Myerscough, would buy us Arby's every day.
Thank you, Jerry.
But, thank you, Jerry, for that. But that's where it started, Brett. I think my passion for the game, and I
to interrupt, you think about that. I mean, Blake's still in the golf business today. I'm still, play a lot of golf. You're doing your deal. Laura, national champion for the University of Arizona.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
I mean,
that's incredible.
I'm getting cold chills right now to think about Laura that just, played golf with us guys and just grew up with us. And then now she went and played at Arizona, played on the LPGA, and then to go back to her alma mater and win the national championship. I mean, come on.
Yeah. I had a great time watching that on TV and was so happy for her. And what an awesome story that is,
it's
right?
amazing.
And, I think that goes back to where I was going with it was, we started with that passion for golf, and I've just kept that, right? I've kept that. A lot of people, would lost that along the way. And I'm 43 years old, and we've been playing golf for a long time in our lives, and I'm still a student of the game.
Yeah.
And, I love that part about it. That's the passion. I think you got to find something that you love, right? I love business. I love golf. I think you got to apply both in some aspects and continue to become great. You had mentioned that I've become a student of the game in golf, and I don't think I was always that way, right? I think that probably delayed my success a little bit, and maybe things would have been different if I'd had a little bit more maturity back then and focused on that. But it is what it is, and I think that's in business too, right? You got to consistently become a student of the game of business, and continue to read books. Surround yourself with people. There's so much great stuff out there now online that is available to you. So if you're not making the time, it's because you don't really want to, right? And
100%
it's a lot of fun. But
So back to those. How many strokes am I getting today?
We'll work on that. Probably a half a shot on each side, a little bit. Yeah.
Well, Derek, it's been awesome having you on the Circuit of Success, man. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about doing this, and so I'm glad we're able to do it. We've been talking about it for at least probably 3 or 4 years, but especially over the last year with the pandemic. So just appreciate you, buddy, as a friend, and what you mean to me, and just it's awesome watching your growth, and just keep rocking.
Yep. Thank you, Brett. Thank you for having me.
Tune in next week for another episode of The Circuit of Success with Brett Gilliland on the lineupmedia.fm podcast network. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and through our website, circuitofsuccess.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and email any questions to info@circuitofsuccess.com.
This podcast was a presentation of lineupmedia.fm.